Hi Jack, how are you getting on with the practical teaching? It's harder than I expected, but I've got some great classes. How about you? Not brilliant. I'm really struggling with my Year 12 science class. Are they hard to control? Well, don't have I don't have simple problems as such. It's just that they don't seem to think that science has anything to do with their life. It's depressing. They listen to what I say. I gave them a test last week and it weren't too bad, but then no engagement. Right. As a part of my teaching practice, I have to design an experiment for them to do. I was wondering about something our children does, you know, asking them to record what they eat and maybe linking it to their state of health. Let's think. So, your methodology would involve children recording what they eat. Okay, but you also need to have access to the children's medical records. And I don't think people would be happy about that. Confidentially, would consider confidentially would be an issue if we could get the right data. The conclusion might be significant, but I suspect it's going to be easy. But I suspect it's not going to be easy, right? Have you talked about doing experiment? Have you talked about doing an experiment with animals? Couldn't that be upset for children? Well, animals don't have to be harmed in any way. It could be just an experiment where they are given a certain diet and their effects are observed. Would I have to get permissions to use animals? Yes, you would have to speak an outline of the experiment to fill in the form, but it's quite straightforward. But if we find out that, says, a particular that affects on health of animals, the sentence wouldn't necessarily to be true for people, wouldn't it? Wouldn't. No, that's true. But the funding for any experiment are going to be limited. This is inevitable. I suppose so. So, what animals could I use to investigate the effects of that? Mice? Yes, I've linked to experimental mice, ones that have been specially bred for experiments. Okay, so that's will your experiment be investigating exactly? Well, something to do with nutrients. So maybe we could look at the food supplements or things like extra iron or extra protein and the impacts on health. That might be rather broad. Maybe just look at the effects of one supplement, like sugar, on the health of mice. In fact, maybe the focus on the maybe the focus could be whether mice can control their own diet. So what happens if they have access to more sugar? They would not do they need? Exactly. Do they need, do they eat it or do they decide to leave it? Great. Then later on, you could do a follow experimenting acting on another variable. Great. Like you could give some of the mice the chance to be more active, running on the wheel or something, and the others just sit around and don't do much. Okay, could repeat or I could repeat the experiment but change the type of food I provide. Or could I repeat the experiment but I change the type of food I provided? Or use spice with different genetic structure? But I think your idea would be more interesting. I might think about some more. I might think about that some more. Can I talk through a possible procedure for experiments whereby are give a sugar supplement? Sure, I did a similar experiment in college actually. Great. Did you know many mice would end it? I'd say about 12, and all young ones, not a mixture of old and young. Okay, I need two groups of equal size, so sitting in each group. And how would I tell them apart? I suppose I could put some sort of test on the group or just make them in some way. You could use food coloring. That wouldn't hurt them. Perfect. Then each group would go into a separate cage. And one group they would call the group A and the would be control group, so they just have ordinary mouse food. I suppose you can buy that. Yes, it's come in that it's come in dry pellets, and the other groups could have the sense of the first group, but they would also have extra sugar. Would you give them strength sugar? It might be better to give them something like cereal with it. Hmm. Then you need to weigh the mice. I should think once a week. And would need an electronic balance. But they don't but they can't hold them on the balance. It affects the reading. Exactly. So you need something called a weight chamber to stop the mice from running away. It sounds complicated, but actually you can just use a plastic box with holes on the top. Okay, so once we have measured the weight gain for each spell, we can count an average for each group as well as the standard deviation and then see where we go from there. Sound cool? I think students will enjoy it. Yes, one thing.